Jimin defended Jungkook publicly, but Jungkook's response shocked fans. "Don't touch him." Jimin's voice rang through the press hall like a shot, sharp, defiant, and trembling with something that sounded like desperation. Camera shutters exploded like a firing squad. The room fell into a shocked hush, stunned by the sudden break in the usually polished demeanor of BTS's frontman. All eyes turned to Jimin, who had leapt from his seat and stepped between Jungkook and the horde of journalists whose questions had turned from curious to cruel. Jungkook didn't move. He remained seated, jaw clenched, his fingers twisting the edge of the tablecloth beneath the dais. His eyes, however, were elsewhere, not on Jimin, not on the press, but somewhere behind the curtain of memory, behind something dark and unresolved. Jimin's chest heaved. "This ends now," he said, his tone low but unshakable. "You don't get to crucify him over a lie." A wave of murmurs rippled through the room. The scandal had broken only 36 hours ago, grainy security footage, a supposed confrontation in a Tokyo alleyway, a whispered rumor about a girl, a voice recording that sounded eerily like Jungkook's. The #Jungkook scandal had climbed global trends within minutes. The internet was ablaze. Now, in front of the world, Jimin had chosen a side. Jungkook's eyes slowly lifted to meet his. There was no gratitude in them, no relief, only something cold, remote. "You shouldn't have done that," Jungkook said flatly. Jimin blinked. "What?" "I didn't ask for your protection." The words landed like ice water, silencing the entire room. Even the cameras froze, as if stunned by the shift in temperature. A flicker of something unreadable passed through Jimin's eyes. Hurt, anger, shame. He said nothing. The press exploded. The microphones roared with shouted questions. PR staff scrambled to regain control. But the damage was done. The entire internet would be dissecting those 5 words by nightfall. Hours later, the silence in the van was unbearable. Jimin sat with his hands curled tightly in his lap, eyes fixed on the passing Seoul skyline. Jungkook sat across from him, earphones in, gaze directed out the opposite window. Jimin broke first. "You're angry." Jungkook didn't answer. "I get it, but you need to understand. I wasn't trying to humiliate you." Finally, Jungkook turned, pulling out one earbud. "Then what were you doing?" "Trying to keep you from drowning." Jungkook let out a short, humorless laugh. "I've been drowning for years, Taehyung. You're just the first to notice." That admission landed hard. And Jimin realized then that what had unfolded on stage wasn't about press or public image or even betrayal. It was about a fracture long buried between them, something festering under years of silence, of pretending, of smiling for the cameras while something dark bloomed beneath the surface. Flashbacks flooded Jimin's mind. Late-night calls Jungkook never returned, the vacant look in his eyes during rehearsals, the bruises that were always from training, but never quite healed. Jimin had chalked it up to stress, pressure, maybe even fatigue. But now, watching the younger man fold in on himself, Jimin knew better. There was something else, something hidden. And this scandal, it wasn't the start of the storm. It was the siren before it. As the van pulled into the garage beneath Big Hit's headquarters, Jimin made a silent vow. He would find out what Jungkook was hiding, even if it meant tearing down everything they had built. Even if it meant losing him. Because something was deeply, terrifyingly wrong, and the world had only seen the surface. Behind the mask of scandal and silence, something darker waited to be revealed. "You think you're saving me, but you're just making it worse," Jungkook growled, his voice low, as the elevator doors sealed them in, just the two of them. The hum of machinery filled the tense silence between floors, but neither of them heard it over the thrum of their own hearts. Jimin clenched his jaw. "So what? I should have let them eat you alive out there. Is that what you wanted?" "You don't get it," Jungkook hissed, slamming the emergency stop button. The elevator jolted and froze mid-floor. "You made it about you, Taehyung. You stood up like a hero, like a goddamn savior." "Because no one else was going to," Jimin shouted back. "Not the company, not even you. You were just sitting there like a statue while they tore you apart. I wanted them to. The words were quiet, but they shattered the air between them like glass. Jimin recoiled. You what? I wanted them to, Jungkook repeated, eyes glassy, voice shaking now. Because maybe then I could finally disappear. The silence that followed was not empty. It was heavy, oppressive, like the breath before a breakdown. Jimin stared at him, disbelief turning to something deeper, more wounded. You don't get to say that, Jimin said quietly. You don't get to say that and expect me to just let it go. Jungkook slid down against the wall, sitting on the cold floor of the elevator like a boy who'd been running for too long. You weren't supposed to get involved. You don't know what I did. Jimin crouched in front of him, leveling their gazes. Then tell me everything. For a long moment, Jungkook just stared at the floor. Then, she wasn't just a girl in an alley, she was someone I knew, someone I trusted. And she sold everything. The footage, the audio, the fake fight. It was staged, Jimin. Jimin's breath caught. You're saying? She was paid to trap me. I played right into it. I was angry that night. I followed her when she asked. I let my guard down. Who paid her? Jungkook looked up, eyes burning. I don't know, but I think someone inside does. Someone from the company. Jimin leaned back as if struck. That's insane. Is it? Jungkook snapped. You think the timing is a coincidence, right when our contract renewals are being negotiated, right when I was speaking out about the solo terms they were trying to force on me. Jimin sat down hard on the floor beside him. The elevator felt smaller now, tighter. Why didn't you say anything? Because I thought I could take it. Because I thought if I kept quiet, it would blow over. But the moment you stepped in front of me today, Jungkook's voice broke. You made me look weak, taehyung to them, to the people watching, and now they'll think they can control me even more. Jimin exhaled slowly, letting the weight of it all settle in. I wasn't trying to make you look weak. I was trying to remind them that you're human. Jungkook didn't reply. His shoulders trembled. For a few beats, the two of them just sat there, pressed into the corner of a truth neither of them had been ready for. Then, slowly, Jimin reached out and placed a hand on Jungkook's back. No words, just presence, just warmth. The elevator buzzed. The emergency stop reset itself, but they didn't move. 2 hours later, the world had moved on to another headline. But within Big Hit's closed-door executive conference room, the real war had begun. Jimin burst in without knocking. Where is he? He demanded. The board members looked up, surprised. One of them, Director Choi, stood. You can't be here, Park. I'm here because I know what you did. The room tensed. Jimin walked forward, voice rising. You set him up. You used him as bait to force a renegotiation. You thought humiliating him would make him desperate enough to sign anything. Director Choi's expression darkened. Watch your mouth, Jimin. These are dangerous accusations. I'm not accusing. I'm stating facts. The head of PR cleared her throat nervously. You have no proof. You think I need proof? Try me, Jimin snarled. Leak one more lie and I swear I'll burn this whole building down with truth. That night a clip leaked online. It wasn't from Jimin. It was surveillance footage clearer than the one in the original scandal. It showed the girls smiling before the confrontation. It showed her handing something, money, to a man in a suit. The internet exploded. And Jungkook. He posted for the first time in days. A single message. They wanted me to fall. I'm learning how to fly instead. The comment section was flooded with reactions. Fans wept. Haters scrambled to delete posts. And amidst it all, one reply from Jimin stood out above the rest. I'm right behind you, always was. But behind closed doors, the company was preparing something else. A message, a punishment, a move to remind the boys who really held the power. And soon, they'd realize. This was no longer just about reputation. This was war. The sharp knock on the door startled Jungkook from a fitful sleep. It was past 2 a.m. His studio was dimly lit, the soft hum of the monitors still alive. He'd fallen asleep in the chair again, surrounded by the half-built skeleton of a new track, melancholic chords, unfinished lyrics, a loop of whispered pain. He opened the door expecting Jimin. Instead, it was Yoongi. Dressed in black from head to toe, eyes tired but alert, he stepped inside without a word, closing the door behind him. He didn't look like someone who had come to talk. He looked like someone who had come to deliver truth. "They tapped your room," Yoongi said bluntly. Jungkook blinked. "What?" "Not just yours. Mine. Jimin's, maybe more. I pulled one of the audio devices from your mic stand." Jungkook stared at him, ice forming in his gut. "Who?" Yoongi scoffed bitterly. "You already know who." The walls felt like they were closing in. "You sure?" Jungkook asked, but his voice faltered. Yoongi dropped a small plastic bag on the table. Inside, a tiny black listening device. Military grade, illegal. "This isn't about a scandal anymore," Yoongi said, packing slowly. "They've been preparing this for months. You're not the only one they want to control." Jungkook's head was spinning. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because Jimin almost got suspended today." Jungkook stood up sharply. "What?" "They called him into the exec office. Told him if he doesn't publicly retract his support for you, he's off the next project. Off promotions. Blacklisted in internal scheduling." Jungkook's heart pounded, and he said. Yoongi smirked just barely. He laughed, told them he'd rather mop bathrooms than betray you. Something burned behind Jungkook's eyes. He sat down heavily, hands trembling against the edge of the table. "He's going to destroy himself because of me." "No," Yoongi said. "He's already bleeding for you, you just haven't seen it." Silence stretched between them like a wire pulled too tight. Yoongi sat across from him, leaning forward. "You're not the only one who's angry, but we need to be smart. If we expose them now, they'll bury us before the truth comes out. We need proof, documents, signatures, messages." "And if we don't find anything?" Jungkook whispered. Yoongi's gaze darkened. "Then we make noise until someone listens, and if they try to silence us," he leaned in, eyes sharp, voice low, "we go nuclear." The door creaked open suddenly, and Jimin stepped in, sweat on his brow, hoodie soaked from the rain. He looked between the two of them and dropped a manila folder on the desk. "I already started." Inside, printed screenshots, time-stamped emails, backstage schedules with odd alterations, digital receipts tracing back to a shadow account linked to a name they all recognized. Kang Do-hyun. A mid-level director. Friendly, smiled too easily. He was the one who always claimed to have their backs. Yoongi picked up one of the sheets and nodded. "Good, we've got a thread." Jimin met Jungkook's eyes. "You said you were drowning. Then let us pull you out, but you have to swim, Kook, you have to fight." Jungkook's voice cracked. "And if I'm too tired to fight anymore?" Jimin walked over and rested his hand on Jungkook's chest. "Then let us carry you." The next morning, the headlines were chaos. "High Bleaks. Protect Jungkook." An anonymous account had posted damning evidence. Redacted emails, suspicious contract clauses, internal conversations suggesting that several idols had been manipulated into scandals, some even forced into isolation or compliance. The internet ignited. Fans began organizing. Journalists scrambled for confirmation. HYB denied everything. But that night, an unfiltered live stream began on an unverified channel. Jungkook appeared. No music. No stylized lights. Just him, sitting in a bare room, looking into the camera with bloodshot eyes. "You've supported me for years," he began, "but you don't know everything, you weren't supposed to." He paused, swallowed. "They tried to break me, and they almost did. But someone reminded me that pain isn't weakness, it's proof I'm still alive." The comments flooded in like a tidal wave. Hearts, tears, questions. He continued. "There's a system here that profits from silence, but I won't be silent anymore." The feed glitched. Then cut to black. Across Seoul, in a high-rise office filled with executives, Someone smashed their phone against the wall. The war had gone public. Jungkook had just become the most dangerous man in K-pop. You just declared war, Jungkook. Namjoon's voice was calm, but it carried the quiet force of an earthquake. He stood in the corner of Jungkook's apartment, arms crossed tightly, watching the younger man pace like a lion trapped in a glass cage. Jungkook turned, adrenaline still coiled around every breath. Good, let them feel what we've been feeling. You think they'll back down now? Namjoon snapped, stepping forward. You think they'll retreat just because you spoke up? I think I finally hit a nerve, Jungkook said. I saw it in their eyes. What you saw, Namjoon growled, was the calm before retaliation. You poked a monster and now you've got blood on your hands. Jimin stepped between them. Enough. His voice cracked like lightning in the thick tension. Don't talk to him like that. You weren't the one they set up. You weren't the one they tried to erase. Namjoon stared at Jimin, jaw tight. And you think I wasn't next? You think this doesn't affect all of us? I'm trying to protect what we have left. What we had is already gone, Jungkook said, quieter now. They took it. They shattered it. I'm not fighting to protect the past. I'm fighting because I'm done pretending it didn't happen. There was a pause, heavy, sharp. Yoongi, leaning by the window, finally spoke. It started now. There's no going back. He handed a phone to Jungkook. They froze your bank accounts. Jungkook's face twisted. What? They're claiming breach of contract, violation of NDA, damaging corporate interests. It's a move to scare you. Standard power play. But it's only the beginning. Jungkook's fingers curled into fists. Let them try. I don't care about the money. You will, Yoongi said darkly, when they start targeting your family. Silence fell again. And just like that, the weight of the war became personal. Later that night, Jungkook stood alone on the rooftop, cigarette forgotten between his fingers as Seoul glittered beneath him. The city looked peaceful, indifferent almost. But behind the lights was a beast, a machine that fed on image, perfection, silence. Jimin found him there. They called me again, he said quietly. Jungkook didn't look at him. What did they offer this time? Solo deal, global tour, creative freedom, all the words we used to dream about, in exchange for walking away from you. And Jimin stepped closer. I told them to go to hell. Finally, Jungkook turned. His eyes searched Jimin's face for something, doubt, hesitation, fear, but he found none. You shouldn't be dragged into this, Jungkook whispered. I don't want you getting hurt because of me. You didn't drag me, Kook. I jumped. Jungkook opened his mouth, but the words wouldn't come. So instead, Jimin stepped forward, reached out, and wrapped his arms around him. For a second, Jungkook stiffened, unused to comfort. Then, slowly, painfully, he melted into it. And there, under a bruised sky, he let himself cry. Not like on stage, not for the cameras, but like someone who had carried too much for too long. The next day, the industry struck back. A leaked memo from HYBE claimed Jungkook was mentally unstable, dangerous, unfit for public appearances. They painted his live stream as an emotional breakdown, a sign of psychosis. They pushed for a forced hiatus, suggested hospitalization. The media devoured it. Talk shows debated it. Headlines twisted it. Mental health advocates condemned the weaponization of trauma, but the narrative was planted. Jungkook stayed silent. Not because he was broken, but because he was planning. Inside the studio, Jimin, Yoongi, and Jungkook worked for days, off-grid. No management, no PR, just them creating something raw, something dangerous. A song not meant for radio, but for rebellion. Lyrics ripped from bruised hearts and shredded truths. They called it Echelon. A layered, 5-minute confession that exposed everything. Contracts written in blood, silences bought with threats, fame used as a leash. Jimin's verse was a plea, Yoongi's was a fury, Jungkook, a scream. They didn't wait for permission. They dropped the track anonymously, unannounced, with no label, no promo. Within hours, it exploded. Echelon Truth trended in 50 countries. Fans connected dots. Other idols began to hint at their own silencing. Whispers turned to roars. Even international outlets began reporting on the dark empire behind K-pop, Golden Boys. And then it happened. A former staffer came forward. On video. A woman in her 30s, voice shaking, eyes red. I was part of the manipulation. I delivered the payments. I forged the footage metadata. I was told if I didn't comply, my family would suffer. Jungkook watched the clip with trembling hands. Every breath she took sounded like freedom and guilt. Jimin stood behind him. This is the crack, the one we needed. Yoongi's phone buzzed. He looked down, then up. They're calling for a full internal audit. Someone just resigned. Jungkook felt something shift inside him. Not peace, but momentum. He turned to them both. This isn't just about me anymore. Jimin nodded. It never was. As the sun rose outside, painting Seoul in gold, the three of them stood together, not as idols, not as products, but as men who had remembered how to speak. They weren't just fighting for truth. They were rewriting it. The lights inside the press hall were searing, brighter than usual, almost deliberately blinding. Jungkook's shadow stretched across the pristine stage floor like a ghost chasing him, long and twisted. This wasn't a concert. This wasn't a fan event. This was war, public, brutal, televised. He stepped up to the mic with nothing scripted. No teleprompter. No manager in sight. Just him and the world watching, waiting, hungering for either vindication or his collapse. A murmur rippled through the crowd as they realized he was alone. No label rep, no lawyer. Not even Jimin. He inhaled slowly, trying to keep his hands from shaking. The scent of sweat and camera equipment mixed with tension that crackled like a live wire. I'm not here to apologize, he said, voice steady. The crowd went silent. I'm not here to explain away what you saw or justify what I've done. I'm here to tell you that I'm done being controlled. The silence was suffocating. He continued. For years, I was the good boy, the golden one, smiled when they said smile, spoke when told, shut up when ordered. I swallowed depression and panic attacks like vitamins and war perfection like a noose. Gasps rose from the front row. A few reporters lowered their cameras. One woman's hand flew to her mouth. But perfection isn't real, Jungkook said, voice hardening. And I bled for it, we all did. Cameras resumed flashing. Reporters shouted questions, but he didn't answer them. He was looking at someone in the crowd. Second row, edge seat. Jimin. Disguised in a hat and sunglasses. But unmistakable, their eyes locked. And just like that, the chaos faded from Jungkook's hearing, and all he could hear was his own heart and Jimin's presence. You've all been lied to, Jungkook said, quieter now. About me, about us, about this industry. He held up a flash drive. This has everything. The real contracts, the audio recordings, the directives to control artists through manufactured scandals, the evidence of blackmail. An audible gasp swept the room. The moment the press conference ended, the world caught fire. HYBE released a statement within an hour calling Jungkook unstable, potentially compromised, and accused him of forging the files. They hinted at legal action, lawsuits. But what they hadn't expected was that he wouldn't be the only one to speak. Taehyung posted a story. Silence is how they win, not anymore. Namjoon went live, stoic and furious. They used us. Don't let them tell you otherwise. By midnight, half the industry was in chaos. Young idols sent cryptic tweets. Former trainees began speaking out. Anonymous staff leaked old footage showing directors screaming, controlling diets, isolating members who pushed back. The perfect facade cracked, and through it, truth poured in. But with light came danger. At 3:12 a.m., Jungkook's apartment was broken into. He wasn't there. He was at Yoongi's, asleep on the floor of the studio, half a burrito still in his hand. Jimin got the call first. He burst into the studio, eyes wild. They tried to erase the drive. Jungkook sat up instantly. What? They hit your place. Everything's trashed. Computers fried. They even ripped out your home studio's hard drives. Yoongi stood slowly. We made backups. Jimin shook his head. They know that too. They're hunting them down. We have to move. Panic ignited behind Jungkook's ribs. Not for himself, for everyone else. Where's the original? Yoongi asked. Jungkook reached into his coat and pulled it out. I gave it to her. Her. Lee Hana, the whistleblower, the former staffer who had come forward. She's keeping it off-grid, Jungkook said. If anything happens to us, she releases it all. Yoongi nodded. Then we still have leverage. Jimin exhaled shakily and sat down, the weight of it crashing down all at once. I can't believe it's gotten this far. Jungkook looked at him. Would you go back if you could? Jimin stared at the floor. No, he said softly, but I wish we hadn't lost so much getting here. A silence fell over the room, not empty, just full of the things they hadn't said. The cost of truth wasn't fame. It was pieces of themselves. By morning, a video surfaced. Blurry, night vision, a meeting between executives. Voices could be heard faintly, words like neutralize, contain, destroy evidence. Public opinion turned sharply. Protests began forming outside HYBE's headquarters. Placards with artists are not property, protect Jungkook, and we demand the truth filled the sidewalks. International media covered it. Governments started asking questions. And just when things couldn't get more dangerous, Jimin received a message. A private number, no contact name. It read, if you don't walk away from him in 48 hours, we release the footage. The real one. You know what we mean. Jimin stared at it, the words burning a hole in his chest. He knew what it meant. The video they'd buried. The night Jungkook had spiraled after a private argument, caught on security cameras crying in a stairwell, breaking down, saying things he didn't mean. They buried it with the help of a former manager. It showed vulnerability, fragility, the kind that could be spun as unfit, unstable, dangerous. Jimin went outside to find Jungkook. He was sitting on the studio steps, eyes on the sky. Jimin sat next to him, silent for a long while. There's a video, he said finally. They're threatening to use it. Jungkook didn't flinch. Let them. Jimin turned to him. It could ruin you. Jungkook looked at him, eyes glassy but steady. Then maybe people will finally stop expecting perfection. For the first time, Jimin didn't have a response. He just sat beside him, their shoulders touching. And in that moment, nothing was staged. Nothing was curated. Just two men, bruised and unfiltered, sitting at the edge of something irreversible. And the world still watching. The video dropped at 2:46 a.m. No warning, no source, just a sudden tidal wave across every platform, spreading like a virus, pixel by pixel. It opened with static, a flicker of night vision grain, and then Jungkook. Alone, sitting on the cold concrete steps of a stairwell, his hoodie soaked with sweat, his chest heaving as if trying to breathe through broken glass. He muttered something, barely audible, then clearer. I don't know who I am anymore. The camera kept rolling. 5 minutes, 10, he cried. He hit the wall, he apologized to no one and everyone. It wasn't violent. It wasn't scandalous. But it was raw. Terrifyingly real. By dawn, the internet had split in two. One side screamed for protection. This is what you did to him. He's not weak, he's human. Mental health advocates rallied. Fans flooded platforms with hashtags of support, videos of themselves crying, recounting how Jungkook's voice had saved them. The other side, cruel, predictable, memes, mockery, cold analyses of whether this was a meltdown or a PR stunt. News anchors debated whether he needed intervention. Jungkook sat in the dark, phone in his hand, watching it all unfold in silence. Across the room, Jimin paced like a caged animal. I told you not to let them get this, he spat. We buried that footage. They had it all along, Jungkook replied quietly. They were waiting for the perfect moment. Yoongi sat near the corner, eyes glued to a monitor as he tracked online activity. They timed it after your press conference. Classic move. Tear down the martyr before he becomes a symbol. Jungkook put down his phone. They underestimated one thing. Yoongi looked up. What? I'm not ashamed anymore. Jimin froze. Jungkook stood slowly, walking toward them. They think they've exposed me, but that's the irony, isn't it? That video doesn't humiliate me. It sets me free. Jimin's voice was hoarse. You were crying, breaking down. You said you wanted it all to end. I did, Jungkook said without flinching. And maybe people need to see that even the strongest can be crushed, that this system doesn't build legends, it breaks them. Yoongi looked up from his screen. Then we take control of the story, own it, reframe it before they do. And that's exactly what they did. Hours later, Jungkook went live. Again. No music, no apology, no drama. Just him, looking directly into the camera. You saw the video, he began. And yes, it's real, I was breaking, and I'm not ashamed. He paused, his voice steady. I didn't cry because I was weak. I cried because I was surviving. He talked, for 20 minutes, about fear, about pressure, about the nights that blurred together in hotel rooms with no clocks and mirrors that lied, about smiling for fans when he hadn't eaten in 2 days, about collapsing backstage with no one noticing. Jimin watched from the side of the room, tears silently trailing down his face. Jungkook ended the live with a whisper. This isn't the end of me. It's the beginning of me, honest. And with that, he signed off. The next day, The Guardian, Time, and Rolling Stone ran front-page features. The cost of ideology. Jeon yoongijungkook, not a product, a person. Even former idols began coming forward. Not all, but enough. One by one, masked by voice filters and blurred faces, they spoke out in a documentary-style stream hosted anonymously by Jungkook's team. The stories matched. Isolation. Control. Silence weaponized like currency. HYBE stayed quiet. No statements, no lawsuits, just silence. Which was louder than any denial. Until a message came through Yoongi's encrypted line. From someone unexpected. Hoseok. Meet me, alone. Yoongi hesitated, reading it over and over before calling Jimin. He's been MIA for months, Jimin said, frowning. Why now? Because maybe he knows something we don't. They met in a nondescript cafe in Gangnam. Hoseok wore a cap pulled low, a hoodie zipped to his throat. He looked thinner, paler. He sat down, didn't order anything. And then he dropped a bomb. They're planning a media blackout, he said. A full one, across all platforms. They've already cut deals with the top networks. Next week, all mentions of Jungkook, your track, the press conference, everything gone. Yoongi's blood went cold. You're serious? They'll erase you, like you never existed. Jimin leaned in. How do you know this? Hoseok looked at him, pain in his eyes. Because I helped build it. I was in those meetings. Jungkook said nothing. His hands trembled beneath the table. I'm done hiding, Hoseok said. Tell me what you need. I'll testify. I'll go on record. Yoongi stared at him. Why now? Hoseok's voice cracked. Because I watched you burn alone, Jungkook, and I can't sleep anymore. That night, all 4 of them stood in the studio. For the first time, all the pieces were aligned. Evidence. Voices. Truth. And something far more dangerous. Conviction. The machine was about to learn the one lesson it never expected. When you turn people into products, eventually, they fight back. Jungkook stood at the center of the stage. No lights, no dancers, no teleprompters or smoke machines. Just a microphone, a silent crowd of thousands, and a truth so heavy it could crush every wall they'd ever performed behind. This wasn't a comeback show. This was reckoning. Behind him, Yoongi, Jimin, and Hoseok stood shoulder to shoulder, unflinching. No stylists, no earpieces, just men who had survived the machinery of fame and finally decided to turn around and face the beast that built them. The stadium was dead quiet, but the world was listening. Live-streamed, uncensored. A digital audience stretching across borders, fandoms, languages. Jungkook stepped up to the mic and looked directly into the camera. To everyone who has followed us, loved us, supported us, you deserve to know the truth. He took a breath, a long one. We were raised in this industry to perform, to smile when it hurt, to obey when it crushed us, to be perfect even when we were falling apart behind the scenes. And every time we asked why, they told us, because you owe the fans, because you're lucky, because this is the price of the dream. He glanced over his shoulder at Jimin, who nodded quietly, tears already clinging to his lashes. But it's not a dream if it kills you. Jungkook continued, his voice rising. They tried to erase me. They tried to erase us. They blackmailed, manipulated, exploited, and when we bled, they called it passion. When we cried, they called it marketing. There were gasps in the crowd, but no one interrupted. They said I broke down, Jungkook said, that I was unstable, that I lost control. He leaned in, fire in his voice. Damn right I lost control, because control was killing me. He stepped back. Yoongi walked forward, dropping a stack of documents on a table set up beside the mic. These are the contracts, the leaked messages, the evidence of everything they did to keep us obedient. He opened the top folder. Inside, the now infamous clause, artist forfeits right to public expression deemed counterproductive to corporate image. You don't own someone just because you pay them. Hoseok stepped up next, calm, measured, haunted. I sat in those meetings. I watched them plan this. I said nothing. And that silence cost my brothers everything. I won't be silent anymore. Then came Jimin. He walked to the edge of the stage, eyes scanning the sea of faces. I almost left him, he said, voice trembling. They offered me the world if I did, and for a moment I was tempted, because fear makes cowards out of all of us. He turned to Jungkook. But I remembered who we are, what we came from, what we promised each other in broken practice rooms and midnight rooftops. The screen behind them lit up images of their early years, grainy rehearsal clips, studio moments, laughter, bruises, sweat, youth. The raw, unpolished truth of who they'd been before the industry polished them into products. The crowd began to chant, softly at first, then louder. Kotjunghu enos, Kotjunghu enos, Kotjunghu enos. And suddenly, it wasn't just about one man anymore. It was about all of them. Every idol who'd been silenced. Every trainee who never debuted. Every artist who'd been shattered by the very system meant to showcase their dreams. Yoongi turned to the crowd one last time. We're not asking for sympathy. We're demanding change. Jungkook walked back to the mic. And if they come for us after this, then let them, because at least now, we're free. The lights dimmed. A single note rang out. Then came the song. Not an anthem. Not a ballad. But a confession. It was called First Breath. And it sounded like liberation. The next day, the industry cracked. HYBE issued a statement, but it was too late. Public pressure demanded a third-party investigation. Global news outlets picked up the story. Contracts were unsealed. Executives stepped down. Whistleblowers were granted immunity. Idols across companies began speaking up, some quietly, some loudly, but the silence that had once been tradition was broken forever. Jungkook disappeared from the spotlight. No tour, no interviews. But fans began spotting him in quiet places, writing in small cafes, walking by the Han River, laughing with Jimin without cameras in their faces. They didn't need a comeback. They didn't need redemption. Because they had reclaimed something more valuable. Their voices. Their names. Their lives. And in the end, the industry learned a truth it had long ignored. even the most obedient stars. Eventually, learn how to shine on their own terms. And no one leaves clean. But some, finally, leave free.